I am here this afternoon to display what I intend to do for Hobson City and the future to come. We have a vision about Hobson City if we stop and think where we used to be. But within that vision, there are many things that we must accomplish. First of all, we must have a mission. And then second of all, we must have revenue goals. We must have economic development goals. And we must, most of all, is quality of life, which you have heard from some of our councilmen indicated that what they would do pertaining to police security of Hobson City. These are some of the things that I look forward to doing and continuing to do with my job within Hobson City. The infraction goal is one of the key elements in developing and structuring Hobson City where we'll be able to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Elston. Mrs. McCrory.
Protocol has been established. Good afternoon. I am proud to have been elected to serve you these past years. When I took office, shortly afterwards, Hobson City was listed on the Alabama Historic Commission's 10 places in peril. And I can truly and honestly say that we have moved from a place in peril to a city of promise, and that has not been without struggles. We have worked to improve our infrastructure. We are proud to have a library that is open, that's serving the children and the adults in the town of Hobson City. We have plans for economic development. One is the old print shop that we hope to use as a spec for some future development. There are some other things that we can do if we are willing to work together as a community, to come together and respect each other's ideas and each other's opinions. We can accomplish whatever goals we set.
Thank you, Mrs. McCrory. Mr. Stringer.
Yes, I'm running for office because for too long, Hobson City has been directly across the street, across the track, on the other side of the fence from prosperity. We are we're not located way out in the rural, in Bullock County or Wilcox County. We are right in the middle of Calhoun County. On this side of town, we are across the street from Oxford. We are across the street from Anniston. On the low end where the schools are, we are actually on the other side of the privacy fence. Everything is moving around Hobson City, and we're stuck because we're stuck in our thinking. And I believe that I have the ability to put together the strategy to move the thinking of this community forward and get them involved in a strategic planning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. We'll start this question posed by the audience is for all of the candidates, and we'll start with you, Mr. Elston. This question is simply, where do you live?
I live here in Hobson City. I was born and raised here. And this has been my home. This is my joy. And this is the fact that I'm running for mayor to improve our conditions here in Hobson City. It's been too long that we sit back on the back burner and look at things as white dollars. It's time for us to wake up and move forward again as a city.
Thank you, Mr. Elston. Ms. McCrory.
I believe the question was, where do you live?
Yes, that was simply the question, where do you live?
Okay, simply put, I live at 100 Church Street, and according to the deeds of that property from 1959, that property is located in Hobson City in Calhoun County, Alabama. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory. Mr. Stringer.
I live at 504 Church Street, Hobson City, Alabama.
Thank you. All right. We'll start this question with you, Mrs. McCrory. As mayor, what are your top 3 priorities? As mayor, what are your top 3 priorities?
My top 3 priorities are, number 1, to continue to work to reestablish a police department. That was an alternative, and that is to have a contract with the county for additional police services. Also for economic development, and to restore the building that we occupy at City Hall because it is in dire need of repairs, and it's going to take a lot of funds to make that happen.
Thank you. Same question is for you as well, Mr. Stringer. As mayor, what are your top 3 priorities?
My top priority as a mayor is to get a handle on the finances of Hobson City. We can stand around and talk about what all we want to do, but until we know exactly how much money is coming in, exactly how much money is going out, until we can have successful audits that prove to the larger community that we are functioning in a credible manner, everything else we say is just talk. We must get control of the finances, we must build credibility, and we must go into a strategic planning process in order to move the town forward. It's great to say you want to have a police department. How are you going to do it? Where are those funds coming from? We can continue to restate the problem, but that doesn't give you the solution. We have to have clear-cut goals. So my first thing is to get control of the finances so that we can figure out how to develop this community from an economic development standpoint and build credibility with the greater community, with our senators, our state representatives, our congresspeople, our county commissioners. Those are going to be the people that's going to help us move Hobson City forward. And if they don't believe that we've put the processes in place so that we are a worthy recipient of funds, Hobson City will never change.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. Mr. Elston, same question for you. As mayor, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Well, first of all, we have to establish goals. And in order to reach those goals, there must be a plan in place. And my plan is that we develop a program that will enhance the growth and redevelopment of the town of Hobson City. We have to understand what is our strategy for this. A vision for the future of Hobson City is to be a vibrant, safe, clean, and family-oriented community. In developing process, some key things have to be in place. Infractions make sure that the infractions can support any business that will move into the city. And this is our water and sewer system and able to keep up with any new business that comes into the city. So far, we have only covered a few of those areas. Through my time as councilman, I have ensured that we have moved into the position of obtaining grants to reestablish some of those delinquent areas. As we move forward as a community, you will be involved in the decision process.
Thank you, Mr. Elston. We'll pass the mic to Mr. Stringer, and he'll take this question first. Here's the question. What are your plans to help bring in businesses to the local community?
Well, in order to bring in businesses, we're fooling ourselves if we think businesses are dying to get to Hobson City. Right now, safety is an issue. Right now, we don't abate property. When industries are looking to locate, they're actually on a mission to eliminate people. Therefore, we must start an abatement process. We must work to improve our safety. We must work to improve our image of Hobson City. And all that's going to start, again, with the finances. Everything that we do has to revolve around the budget. And everything we do has to revolve around us being able to have good, clean audits. When you talk about writing grants, you can't apply for funding at ADECA. You can't apply for major federal grants if you can't produce a good audit. Now, the mayor did get an audit, and she said it's the first one in 20 years. Congratulations. But it was a bad audit. We had 14 findings that says we do not manage money well. We must change that first and foremost if we're going to move Hobson City forward. Thank you.
Now we'll give Ms. McCrory the same question. What are your plans to bring in local businesses to the community?
We are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, Calhoun County Economic Development, and also working with the Alabama Development Office and working with other people that we know throughout the state. And let me say this about not having an audit after more than 20 years. Our auditors didn't tell us that we had a bad audit. In fact, they told us for the time that we did not have an audit, that it looked very good. We are coming up on our second audit, and we have worked hard to put some things in place so that our finances can be accounted for. And we are continuing to work on those things and get those things done. And I am very proud of what we have been doing and what our city clerk has been able to do with the work that she has to do. And we will continue to work to make that a priority in terms of our finances being accounted for. And in terms of further economic development, you know, we have spoken with some people around the state, one person who has been here to look at the building that we were considering, who has given us some directions to go should we get that. And then if that does not come through, looking at some other things, some small businesses, medium-sized businesses. We're looking at some ways to, everybody in Hobson City has some kind of money. Everybody in Hobson City spends some kind of money. And so we want to find some ways to help keep some of that money in Hobson City. The only thing we have right now is Ross's, and he has gas and gum and some other things. And it would be good if some of us would just stop in sometimes and make it a point to support that only local business that we have here in Hobson City.
Thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Elston. What are your plans to bring in businesses to the local community?
The first thing that I have on my agenda for, as your mayor, is to pull the community together. And when we pull the community together, there's a million ideas out there that can help develop this city. There are a million ideas out there about how we can do things that collectively we together can move forward. We can advocate about what we have not done, but we must look for what we can do to better Hobson City. Working as a community to provide activities and services that will enhance and will be better for Hobson City. Our first door of opportunities when someone comes into Hobson City, what is the first thing you see? Dilapidated buildings. And when you see those dilapidated buildings, you turn and go the other way, because you know behind dilapidated buildings there's a crime asset behind that. So working together, we can improve Hobson City, first of all, by cleaning up our front door. And once we clean up our front door, realizing that there are a lot of things that follow behind that to enhance Hobson City, and that is working together. In order for us to do that as a community, I need your ideas and your support as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Elston. You can go ahead and keep the mic, and you'll take this question first. And I think it dovetails nicely into the question we just asked. And this seems to be also a popular question from the citizens that are here tonight. The question simply being this: what are your plans to clean up the city?
As mentioned earlier, the nuisance abatement issue is a very relevant issue within City Hall. First of all, understanding how the abatement system works. Once you submit the proposition for deleting a house from within the city, there's a process that you must go through. First of all, determine who owns that home and register mail, and then enforcement of the nuisance abatement law. That is one of the issues that takes place in your abatement process. It's not a simple process, but it's a lengthy process. So as we move forward, I would be looking to set in place an expedient measure to move to eliminate the dilapidated eyesores that we have here within Hobson City. The second essence is that in order for business to come into Hobson City, first of all, you must establish the fact that you got good running water, a good sewage system in place, and then, of course, your police security. With all those three, then we can move forward once established.
Thank you, Mr. Elston. Same question for you, Ms. McCrory. The question being, what are your plans to clean up the city?
First of all, again, it takes money to clean up the city. We have a grant pending that has some money that will be available for abatement. And then the problem, as has been explained, is that there's a process that you go through, and also sending the homeowner certified mail to ask them to clean up their property. And then if the city cleans up the property, then the city can attach a lien, which requires the attorney doing some work. And the process itself takes about 6 months from what I understand. And we understand that from a previous time when that was done with a lot of property owners, that all it did was ended up with the city losing money from all of the letters that were sent, and nothing happened. Again, we go back to not having police to enforce our codes. And so we have to take it step by step. And once we have some police in place, that will help us, but also the process itself in terms of getting the information to the homeowner and giving them time to respond to the letter that they are sent, and then the city taking some action. Again, we're talking about manpower to do the work that has to be done, and you're also talking about whatever equipment it takes to tear the house down. So, you know, there are a lot of, you know, we see a lot of things, and we say a lot of things that needs to be done, but there's a step and a process in all of it, and there's a cost in all of it.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer, same question for you.
I agree with the mayor that it requires taking action, and that's exactly what has not been happening. We are very familiar with the process, but we're not enforcing the process. You know, as far as our nonprofit, we started a community-wide pride campaign. We didn't have the authority to abate property and demand that somebody clean their property, so we went to Plan B. We just went and asked people, how can we help you clean your property? And there are many people in this community that have pride signs in their yards because they bought into what we were doing. We must raise the bar. It is unacceptable for that person not to clean their property. We have to enforce the ordinance. There's no need in having an ordinance if you're not going to enforce it. You'd be surprised. If you go to Anniston and Oxford council meetings, if you go to the county commission meetings, people are there asking for extensions. A lot of people are there, the property has been cleaned, and then there's just a few that you actually have to abate. There are too many people that own property and they live in North Carolina or California, and they got a piece of property across the street. There's one right out that door when you go out. They pay $30 a year taxes, and they don't care that that property looks bad in your neighborhood because they keep their property up. So we can't allow that. We must enforce the abatement laws. If you put that tax lien on that person, you don't necessarily have to clean. You put that tax lien on that person, and next year when it's time to go pay their $40 property taxes, guess what? They got a $740 bill. Once people realize that you no longer take it, most people will step up to the plate. And there will only be a few homes that you really have to abate.
Mr. Stringer, I will allow you to take this question first. And the question is, how do you propose to make employees more accountable?
Well, I do believe that going back to the strategic planning process, you have to include employees in that process. It is very important that they understand the overall goals and they understand what their roles are in helping to attain the goal. And that's why it's very important to include them in the process. The other thing that I would do is, you know, we are a municipality. and we don't have anybody that's really in charge of maintenance. We don't have a director of maintenance. They don't have a supervisor. I mean, you can't be the mayor and be somewhere else and managing the workers too. So we need, I mean, what town can run without a maintenance supervisor? Somebody that's in charge of that particular area. So that's what I would do. We would look to hire somebody to be in charge of maintenance. Hopefully that person will have some different skill sets. Maybe he can do a little welding, a little heating, air conditioning. Yeah, it'll cost a little money, but you get what you pay for. But we got to have somebody that will be in charge of maintenance. The mayor and the council can't do that.
Mr. Elston, same question for you. How do you propose to make employees more accountable?
The first objective for me is to establish rules and regulations that will govern our employees. As Mr. Screamer has indicated, yes, supervision is definitely needed. In order for any process to work properly, it must be supervision. There is, i.e., the mayor has appointment authority, assignment of jobs, but from that point on, if she's not in location, that job is not guaranteed to be completed. So if you have a supervisor over your maintenance department that will follow through, and at the close of the day, report back what jobs have been assigned and has been completed, then you will be successful in that area.
Mrs. McCrory, same question. How do you propose to make employees more accountable?
You know, we do have to be real, because we have to work with the hand that we've been dealt. And we don't have a maintenance supervisor, unfortunately. It would be good if we could hire someone who does not have to have supervision all the time to do work. We are very limited. We have a city clerk who's overworked, and I find myself sometimes doing maintenance work, going to the cemetery to make sure the graves are ready, and some of the other things that are being done. So we all have to wear very different hats to make sure that what we do works in this community. I wish we could have more clerks in the office. I wish we could have more people working for City Hall. But this is the city. This is the reality. This is the reality that we live in. And so we've learned to make the best of what we have and be hopeful to make improvements to make things better. We can have rules, but if there's nobody there to watch you make sure that those rules are enforced, it's just like children when mama leaves home. We just run wild and do what we want to do. And unfortunately, that's not the best way to spend city money, to have city employees out not doing what they are being paid to do. But again, all of you know what we are working with at City Hall. You know the staff that we have at City Hall. You know what everybody at City Hall is supposed to be doing. Now, how we fix that, I don't have a solution right now, just like I don't have a solution for a lot of the problems. But I know that if we work together, we can find some solutions to some problems and stop talking about the problems and start working on some solutions. We can talk about strategic plans, but if you don't have anybody to carry out those plans, and I'm very proud to say that the strategic plan that was developed by Community and Economic Development, we carried out 90% of that plan. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McCrory. Mr. Elston, will allow you to take this question. And the question from the audience is this: what is your plan to unite this community?
As I look over the audience out there and I look at Hobson City as a whole, and being a homeboy from the beginning, I think that the possibility of us coming together is very relevant right now. If you look around the community, how many churches are here in Hobson City? And if you add that up with the leasing churches, we as a community and family, we need to come together. This is a time that is of census for us, that we come together and move this city forward. We can't do it if we sit up here trying to handle the issue on our own. And that's not issue. My issue is that we do things, not I do things. When we do things, we can get a lot accomplished.
Thank you, Ms. McCrory. Same question for you.
One day I looked up after I became mayor of Hobson City and realized what a pickle I was in. I needed some help. So I called my Baptist pastor, Reverend Dennis McKinney. I said, Reverend McKinney, we need some help on this council. If we're going to move and get some things done, we need some help if we're going to get this community moving. I can truly say, for me, I think this community has lost its soul. When I look around and I see the despair, and then I see the blame that we place on each other for things not being what they should be, and that, you know, we have to look at ourselves and the role that we've played. One of the things that we started doing earlier this year was reading the book by Dennis Kimbrough, Daily Motivations for African American Success. And that was part of a community read program. But I had hoped that that program, and I see a lot of people in here who tell me that they read that book every day, that at the end of reading that book, that people will be motivated, elevated, and want to participate in getting together and developing a strategic plan. That after they see, after 365 days of people talking about how they have gone through struggles and the things that they did to get to the success that they got to, that by reading those lessons every day, meditating on those lessons every day, that we will come to a point that we will be spiritually in tune as a community and come together to live together and work together. Because Dr. King said if we don't learn to live together as people, we're going to die together as fools. And so we've got to learn to live together as people.
Thank you, Ms. McCrory. Mr. Stringer, same question.
Would you repeat it, please?
Yes, certainly. What is your plan to unite this community?
Well, I keep going back to the same things because it's the key. The strategic planning process, everybody is made better by going through that process. The process itself unites the community. It's the one caveat that pulls us all onto the same page. Otherwise, we're just running around putting out fires. So the strategic planning process is crucial. Over the last few years, the Hobson City Community and Economic Development we've probably generated $250,000 in revenue. And somebody might say, well, you want to brag about that. It's a great thing that we've done. We have a $400,000 park project in process. But what's more important than what we've done is how did we do it? The process that we brought about that change. It's going to take a process for change for Hobson City to change. It won't just happen. There has to be a process. And the strategic planning process, what it is, being accountable, building credibility, cleaning the community up. I probably said the same things about the same 3 or 4 issues over and over because it's the key. And without doing that, nothing will change. We have to give people something to join in. You can't just say we're going to come together. Come together and do what? Somebody's got to create the vision. Somebody's got to set the goals. Somebody's got to figure out what our obstacles are. You got to know what you're joining into. And right now, there is not a process for change in Hobson City. And that's what I believe I can bring to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. Ms. McCrory, your turn to take this question. Actually, this question is directed to you, and it says, why are citizens in Hobson City still paying water bills that are so high if we've already paid off the debt?
First of all, paying off the debt was never intended to reduce your water bill. Those water rates are set according to what your current usage is. When we paid off the $115,000 water bill, I understand that some people thought that it would mean that their water bill would go down. That was never intended. And your water bill will not go down. And the reason I say that is because we are already at a very fair rate with Anniston, and we are already sort of behind. I won't say behind in terms of the bill because the bill is caught up and paid. But your water rate will not go down. What the mayor and the council can do is keep that from going up. But then if Anniston raises their rates, then we've got to be competitive with them. We cannot sell the city water. They will not sell the city. All of the cities that they provide water for, they have to give us a competitive rate. They don't charge us any more than they charge anybody else. And therefore, we cannot charge you any less, because then again, we go back into the hole that we were in to begin with. So no, and don't let nobody tell you when they get in office, they're going to lower your water rates. That's not going to happen.
Thank you, Ms. McCrory. I will give both Mr. Elston and Mr. Stringer a chance to respond also to that question if they would like, starting with you, Mr. Elston.
As you know, that we were in a high debt of $115,000 for our water bill, based on the fact because our infraction, our system was dilapidated. We have now improved our system through several grants that we have received. We have installed new water mains throughout Hobson City. On Carolina Street, we removed a spider web where people were getting free water just because they tapped into somebody else's line. Up on Strickland, we put in a new line there. On Bruce, we put in a new line there. And these are some of the things to enhance our water system. We have installed 100 or so, 99 meters to be exact, new digital electronic meters. And my intent, within the next year or so, if this next grant is approved, we're going to replace all of the meters for the people here in Hobson City. As the mayor stated, we're based on a rate. Your consumption rate starts at your first amount of water, and they use what they call a cubic foot. If you're concerned about your water bill and want to know exactly what your usage is, Anniston Water Department, and I've already talked with the paid clerk there, will be more than happy to explain to you what your water rate is and how it is calculated. That seems to be a major issue with a lot of people because they're saying, well, we paid off the bill, why should we still be paying a high water rate? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a reality. That's something that we have to deal with. Not only you, but it affects me as well.
Thank you, Mr. Elston. Mr. Stringer, would you like to have an opportunity to respond to the question that was posed to Mayor?
Absolutely. Anniston charges Hobson City a fee for water. Hobson City puts a surcharge on top of that. If there was not a surcharge, there was nothing to raise. The water rate was raised. Now, the water bill has been paid off. I do know that since October of last year, the town of Hobson City has been receiving surplus checks from the city of Anniston for water. 2, 3, 4,000. I don't know the exact amount, but I do know there have been some surplus checks coming in over and above. Now, some of that money is needed for repairs. But right now, additional money is coming into Hobson City over and above what the bill is. I'm not saying that should be reduced. Maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't. That's something we have to look at once we get in. But I can tell you this, you at least deserve some additional services for the money you're spending. The poverty rate in Hobson City is pretty high. So why is it that poor people are paying a higher water rate than anybody else in Calhoun County? Water is a necessity. And you shouldn't be, just drugged across the board because we're trying to take care of a poor town. I think you need to know. You should be told exactly how much above the water rate that Anniston charges that Hobson City is charging. You should know that. And once you know that, with that surplus, where do those funds go? And if we need to continue to charge it, what are the additional services are you getting? We did have a rate, and it was raised. Hobson City does have the ability to lower it back to where it was. We're not stuck there.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. We have another question, or a series of questions that related to the police department, which also seems to be a topic of great importance. And so, consolidating those questions, and I'll start with you, Mr. Stringer, on this question, your turn. The basic question is this. If elected mayor, will there be a police department coming to Hobson City?
We will definitely improve safety. I have recently met with several different mayors in the community, in the Calhoun County area, who are mayors of other small towns, to try to get a feel for what the police department is costing that community. One local community is costing them about $269,000 a year. I found that out. I know that our current budget for last year was somewhere a little over $300,000. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but you need to know exactly what our budget is, and you need to know exactly what the police department will cost. Now, after we get in there and get a handle on the finances, we'll decide what's the best route to go. One thing that could happen is we try to go through the Department of Justice to get some funding to pay the sheriff's department additional funds to give us some additional patrols. The bottom line is we can no longer sit and do nothing. We have to explore all avenues, whether that's the sheriff's department. You know, I'm under the impression right now that we own the old Masonic Lodge. If we do, we need to put a precinct down there. That's where all the traffic is. We must explore all avenues, but until you dig into that budget and know exactly what's coming in, and what's going out, we really can't say what we will do. I do know that there are some options on the table that I won't say tonight, but there are some options on the table to get some public safety going on in Hobson City. For 4 years, we've done nothing. That's a fact.
Mr. Elston, same question to you as well. If elected mayor, will there be a police department coming to Hobson City?
That is a very difficult question to answer based on the knowledge that I have pertaining to our budget. But let me assure you of this. My first objective is to work with the county, the city of Anniston, the city of Oxford. We had an avenue that where we could possibly establish a strong relationship with the county, and that is by providing a patrol through the city. Until we are stabilized financially, and I like to thank Mr. Stringer for that, because that's very important. When you talk about taking care of a police officer first, his finances and insurance, et cetera, you're talking about an enormous amount of money. And I wouldn't want an officer to come in here and we can't take care of him financially. So you, as the citizens, must know exactly what's going on with our finances.
Ms. McCrory, same question. Would there be a police department coming to Hobson City?
I think we're closer to getting some additional police services. I don't know how that's going to come about because of the foundation that has been laid for the past 3 or so years since we've been in office. We went to see Governor Riley about help with a police department. And I've gone to stronger mayors than I am in this area to help me try to navigate that train and to try to get some police in Hobson City. I think we have done everything humanly possible given that we don't have any money. And I can recall Freddie one time when I don't think Freddie thought I was doing enough because of what he had been able to do in the past. those grants were not out there. And one day I told Freddie, I gave him the numbers, you call down to Decker yourself. And then Freddie called down there, and then he called me back, and he said, yeah, they told him something that he wasn't happy to hear. But in essence, what they said is, until you can show us that you can be stable for X number of years, they weren't even going to give us money for a police car. And when we talk about, you know, getting a handle on finances, we're getting a handle on finances. I hear all this jargon, and, you know, we hear words and phrases, and we don't quite understand what somebody is talking about. But I am proud of the job that we have done to get our finances in order. Our clerk is in training constantly, and seeking out other help to get some things done. So we are working people, and if we get some police, and I hope we will in the next year, it will be because of the foundation that has already been laid. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCrory. This next question is going to go to Mr. Elston. We'll start with you on this question. And this is the question. It says, if elected, what would you do to make sure that everyone elected would get out and do what they promised that they were going to do?
I thank you for that question, because that's one of the things on my floor map, is that, first of all, the councilman has a job to you as citizens, as so long as the mayor. And that responsibility lies within what we do within City Hall. First of all, communication. We must have a straight line of communication among the council and mayor in order for us to accomplish anything. If we hide something back, or we do not accomplish the things that are set up for us to do, then you have confusion. And I often wondered over the last 3 decades that I've been there as a councilman, why nobody comes. Because they don't want to hear arguments and disputes being floored when you're having a formal meeting, which should be followed by your agenda and completed.
Thank you, Mr. Elston. Ms. McCrory.
I don't think it's my responsibility to make sure every person who runs for office does what they say that they're supposed to do. Holding people accountable is one thing. I think people shouldn't even run if they don't plan to do what they say they will do. And it's enough for me to try to do what I say I will do. And what I will do is work with the other people to help them accomplish what it is that they want to do. So I think it has to, that responsibility lies within each individual for us to come together as a mayor and a council to make sure that we do what we say we're going to do. And maybe every so often we can remind each other, okay, you know, when you were running for office, you said you were going to do this. I mean, but we're not here to police each other, but we can hold each other accountable for what we say we're going to do. And one of the best ways to do that, my people, is for you, the person elected, for me, to do what I say I'm going to do. And when I fail in my trying, it's absolutely not because I have not tried my very best.
Thank you, Ms. McCrory. Mr. Stringer, same question to you.
I personally believe that the reason people don't do what they say they were going to do is because nobody ever knew what that was. They're not individuals. They're supposed to function as a team. And if the team never sat down and strategically figured out what everybody was going to work together on, then it's not about what, I mean, Mr. Elston don't supposed to just go off on his own and do something, and it doesn't tie into anything else everybody else is doing. I think the reason you go to council meeting and there are no reports is because they didn't know what they were supposed to work on. They never decided what they were supposed to work on as a group. That's what the strategic planning process does. It draws you into a process. You know your role. as a citizen, you will know your role. Right now, there is nothing. Dr. King says, without an agenda, you become the agenda. When you don't have an agenda, you eat on each other. You argue. You make citizens say, why did I come up here tonight? Because there was never a plan laid out. That's why we're stuck. Until we come together, go through that strategic planning process. The Hobson City Community and Economic Development, we have success because we all know what we're working on. We reached consensus. We agreed that here are our 5 goals. We decided that here is the strategy. Here are the obstacles that can get in our way. Here are the people that we need to partner with to accomplish that. That's a process. And without a process, then everybody's just going off on their own and everybody's mad because nobody's getting anything done. We must do a process. Must get involved in the process.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. We're coming to our time deadline here, so I think the last question here, and this also comes from the audience. I want to thank the audience for giving some fantastic questions. All these questions tonight have come from you, and it demonstrates that you have a great passion and a great commitment to seeing your city improve. The final question that I will pose to each of the candidates is simply this. And we'll start with Ms. McCrory. It's your turn to take this question first. And the question is this. How would you take Hobson City to a higher level? Ms. McCrory, we'll start with you.
You know, that's an interesting question. And when you talk about a higher level, you know, how high and what level are you talking about taking a city? When I'm thinking about taking Hobson City to a higher level, I think also of the expectations having been raised these past few years in Hobson City. And so taking Hobson City to a higher level is going to require each individual, first of all, before we can do something collectively, we have to do something individually, decide that we want to become a part of this community and not just live here. And to be able to take it to another level, let us decide together as a community where it is that we want to go. Because one thing is for sure, you cannot lead people where they do not want to go. Let us decide where it is that we want to go and what it is that we want to do. And together we can reach higher heights. But we cannot do it alone.
Mr. Stringer, same question for you. What would you do to take Hobson City to a higher level?
Well, the first thing I do is figure out what that level is. And that's creating a vision. And it wouldn't just be my vision. It would be all of the council persons coming together. It would be the Hobson City Community and Economic Development. It would be any of you that want to get involved in the process. And we would sit down together and decide what our vision is. What do we want to see Hobson City become? I'd like to see Hobson City become a community, a town that can sustain itself, that there's a tax base, there are businesses in this town that can support this community. With that said, it once again goes all the way back to where did we start? Clean it up, become financially accountable, build credibility outside the community, give our citizens hope. We're in the midst of a $400,000 park project, and that project we picked that project to give you something you can see, touch, and feel, so that you can believe that, hey, somebody's got a process. If I get on board, things can change. And until we give you something you can see, touch, and feel, you won't believe. This town has been beaten down for many years. Dr. Satcher said, you got to come into the mainstream. We're not in the mainstream. Our children go to school in the mainstream. We shop in the mainstream. We travel in the mainstream, and then we drive back across those tracks into the past. That has to change, y'all. And it will not change just by talking about it. It takes planning. It takes commitment. I'm all in. I moved out of suburban Oxford back into Hobson City because I was committed. And I worked with a group of people who were committed. These people have been in some of your yards on a Saturday, cleaning up your property. That's commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. Mr. Elston, same question to you. What would you do to take Hobson City to a higher level?
I believe the most important thing is unity. Unity of the community, which has never been in place for some time. But first of all, the most important thing is our leadership goals. And that is to develop a program that would enhance the growth and development of the town of Hobson City. We must also understand what is our strategy for a vision for the future. Have we really decided, or have we looked at the fact that there is a possibility that we can do things that we've never done before? That possibility is real. We as a community, if we come together and pull together, set up communities where we can establish policies and procedures that are in line with our laws that govern how this city operates. Oftentimes we have a tendency to try to slide around the corner and do some things that are not relevant for the city. Making sure that our infraction is stable, that if someone wants to come in here and establish a business, they can feel secure that we have a police force that's in place. They can feel secure that they have a sanitation, the sewer and sanitation are established. And then most of all is cleaning up our front door. Those are the main objectives that I look forward to accomplishing. As we move forward into the year of 13, there are a few things that I do have on the agenda. You know that big ditch over there, run down through Hobson City? That's going to be closed over if everything is approved that we have planned right now. Thank you.